It's Billy. Right now. Yo, what if I got attacked by the clones? What if the builder think they found a better stone? What if the beat don't match with the metronome? What if that means you walk your path alone? Call me a vagabond. If all these streets lead into Rome, then wherever I lay is my home. It's Brooklyn, boy strong. I manifest, I'm in the zone. Y'all silly better back up off my throne. Listen, boy nice, better give him his propers. How we come out sane from all the mosh pits. How we found the key to the game without a locksmith. How we seem to manage these lanes is so obnoxious. He let it flow from the brain, trusting the process. A vet journeyman on multiple rosters. If I want it, I go out and get it and cop it. A monster with limitless options. Man, like goddamn, y'all gon' soon figure out who I am. We stay cooking, y'all used to that spam. Western beef, I might square up with the square dance. Look, I change plans, not even a southpaw, I'm an outlaw with a rare stance. Your crew never had a fair chance.
Why's that?
I kill a whole bear with my bare hands. Oh, they studied the dark? Well, I was raised in it. Brain shifted, the kid displayed insane physics. Best story never told, and it ain't finished. How we handled the rock, spun and kept the same pivot. I frame different, hot like a flame kitchen. A whole 2 levels out of your range gifted. Catch me on the highway, lane switching. Or right at the top of your bay wish list. It's Billy.
Yo, 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 yo.
Right now.
What up, y'all? It's Billy. How we doing? Today is January 9th, 2023, and we have a really great show today on How Billy Sees It. Sometimes I come in with this, and I am I guess I'll be winging it today too, but I have something more of a schedule kind of approach today. Because today I want to talk about the Manoverse. I want to talk about the Manoverse, and I want to talk about the real Manoverse. And I'll talk a little bit about more what I mean with those two things. I started an Instagram handle, actually. Somehow the real Manoverse was out there. Sorry, Real Manosphere. Real Manosphere was out there as a handle, and I picked it up, and I started that handle on Instagram. It's been pretty good. I just started that this week. And in 1 week, I think we're at like 25 followers. Just kind of curating some good content, some good information for my dudes, for the men in the Real Manosphere. So check that out on IG, at the Real Manosphere. And that's what this episode's about. We're going to get into that. Why did I make that? Why did I choose that? What am I attempting to do there? Obviously, I'm trying to repurpose that word. And I'll get into that. But this week was cool, yo. First week of 2023. I hope everybody has had a good one, a good start to another year. Let's hope 2023 is a little less ridiculous than the last one was, but we'll see. We'll figure that out. I had a good week, chilling, working with Shiva. We did SMC on Saturday morning cartoons, for those who didn't see. It was about gore. You should check that out. It was a different episode. We talked about some real shit, actually, and some of the darker, more difficult things that married couples might have to go through. So Sheba and I talked about all kinds of stuff, including her period and her monthly menstrual cycle, and how we navigate that. It was an interesting episode. And yesterday she did an episode about divorce. So if you haven't seen that, you should check that out too. But today, I'm here to talk about the Manoverse. I'm sorry, the Manosphere. I keep saying Manoverse, but it's really, people call it the Manosphere. I've seen it both ways, but let's go with Manosphere. Especially since the IG handle is the Real Manosphere. That's what we're going to go with. So, I mean, if you don't know what the Manosphere is, then maybe I should do a little primer, but I think most of us know what it is. The Manosphere is kind of an online rooted community of men from whom like there's been some leaders that have come out. You know, some people have become very popular by riding this wave of talking to men, particularly talking to men about success, about, you know, women and how to be in the world. And unfortunately, the people who've gotten really popular off this manosphere thing are a lot of either mediocre or shitty people. Okay, that's what's happened here. Probably the most popular of that whole ilk, of that whole group, is a guy named Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate is just known for his misogyny, knows for his misogynistic comments. He talks about slapping women and controlling women. And it seems that he's been under arrest now for some sex trafficking stuff. What's good, man? Oh, Black Lantern, what up, brother? So Andrew Tate's like the most popular name to come out of this manosphere thing. And, you know, again, I think he's in jail right now off of some sex trafficking charges. So we'll see what happens with that. But there are other names too. You know, Kevin Samuels comes to mind. A lot of people look up to him and look up to his opinions on dating and women. I would put even like Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh. These are like white guys now in this manosphere thing. They talk more about politics. They're in the Daily Wire, which is like a news website. But they do a lot of stuff about masculinity. They try to coach up men on how to be men. And they sit around in rooms with cigars, smoking and posturing and trying to pose for what men should be, right? And so I think it's important. I think it's interesting to look at how this thing has developed, because a lot of it has been really trash stuff. People have gotten really famous and popular. There's some good money and advertising and YouTube and all these different platforms. If you can secure a huge audience, which some have, a huge audience talking to men, about men's issues. So if that already exists, then what's the problem? Why did I need to do the real manosphere, right? I think the real manosphere, the difference I want to point out, and I'm going to go through it for a whole hour here, but there's some major differences between the manosphere as it's currently conceived with Andrew Tate and these gentlemen, and the manosphere that I'm talking about. The manosphere that I'm curating, the already a good group of men that I know, that I follow on Instagram and on Facebook and on other platforms, who come to talk to men and have a completely different sense about what it means to be a man and how to operate, and, you know, advice and tips. So, you know, one of the key things I find with this, the typical manosphere, the old manosphere, is it seems like they're talking to kids a lot, right? One of the first things you notice is they're talking to kids a lot. There's a lot of chatter about how to get a girl and how to have sex and stuff like this, you know? How to get a girl to have sex with you. You know, a lot of pointing at women and finding out the flaws in women. Letting these girls know what they're doing wrong in the dating game, how delusional they are. What's that other one? Fresh and Fit. That's a YouTube joint with two guys who talk about, you know, their dating exploits and try to give tips and try to point out all the problems that women cause in the dating scene. I think, you know, and I saw this when you look at Kevin Samuels, some of his videos, there's actually videos I saw where I think he was pretty clear about sort of his career. Because Kevin Samuels, for instance, was on the internet doing something like what I'm doing. He's been doing it for a long time, and he's since deceased now. But for a long time, he was on the internet talking about relationship issues. Even some of the early stuff seemed to be a genuine effort to try to improve and mend relationships, particularly in the Black community, right? But he said it straight away. He's found a niche. His clicks skyrocketed. He became a household or national name when he realized that the market, they wanted to see women get made fun of. That's what propelled him, you know? When he was able to call women out for the things that they do, the delusional beliefs that they had, He would have women on the show, and they would talk. Some of them would say that they deserved a man with X income, $1 million or six figure, this and that, and he would ask them about themselves, and they would admit that they had nothing near that. They didn't have their life and their finances in order. Some of them weren't. I don't know how. Did he have pictures or were they on the video too? Yeah, some of them he would rate people. Some high school stuff. He'd rate people on a scale of 1 to 10. You know, you're a 5. How do you expect to have an 8 who's blah blah blah? And from that has just sprouted a whole bunch of different people attempting to talk to this same demographic of men and trying to give these kinds of tips. And it's kind of a mess, real talk. When I started the Real Manosphere Instagram chat, so I started to like and follow different people, and Instagram starts to suggest different profiles, and I started to follow many of them. And then you go look at the joint, they're saying wild stuff. There's so much bad, harmful, toxic information. Is people really doing well? 160,000 followers off this, like really well attended and well liked. And they're saying stuff, they're telling the boys and telling the men that women are dumb, women are emotional, women are problems, women are anchors, women are distractions from your purpose. Make sure you have 5 or 6 of them. Keep your distance. They teach you how to cheat, teach you how to have a separate phone and this and that and the whole deal. And you know, there's a market for this, and so it exists, because as long as there's a market for it, it will exist and people will jump in there. But real talk, especially coming from like a CNN background as a media critic, someone who's critical of cable news, CNN and Fox News, I really see this stuff in that same vein. Okay? The problem with CNN and Fox News and MSNBC is that as corporate media outlets, their goal is to try to get attention and get clicks and get followers. And they're pointing towards specific demographics and saying things in just the right way to attract them and to keep their attention. I think you can already tell what the problem is with that, right? So if you're in MSNBC, you can't criticize a Democrat president. They won't do it, right? Because the audience is Democrat. Fox, of course, same thing. But on the flip side, for Republicans, they don't criticize a Republican president. They don't criticize so many things. The platforms of the Republican Party and the people who have these conservative views, they know their audience very well, and they keep feeding them what they want to see or hear. And I've been trying to make a distinction between that kind of media and the media that I think most of us think we're tuned into when you watch Fox, MSNBC, CNN. CNN has the same problem, but it operates slightly differently. It plays from the middle, but it's also aligned with more liberal values and has the same problem with the politics and its inability to make a full critique and present a full picture of the world. So the problem with these old manosphere dudes is that they are seeking out impressionable young audiences, kids who are insecure, who are trying to figure out their place in the world, who are trying to get better results with women. They might be struggling with women. Some of these dudes call themselves incels, like that's their name and their identity is involuntary celibate. And they not only want information to improve that plight, maybe get some buns occasionally, but also they like watching people berate those same women who don't give them the time of day, right? This feeds into a personal anxiety, a personal desire to get some get back, or to, the world is all fucked up. There's all kinds of problems. People feel powerless, like I said, insecure. And it's like, oh, here's somebody who's got a little personality, a sense of humor, and they have the ability to make these women look dumb, the same women who are rejecting me, and that is what the manosphere seems to be. most often. The problem is too, it's not just young dudes. I'm seeing older dudes in there too. Older men. Today I just saw a post from one of these manosphere pages. The joint said, I'm trying to get this quote, man. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. This dude said, a woman who can't stop running her mouth, a woman who is aggressive and can't stop her running her mouth, is the same as a dude who's aggressive and can't control his hands, can't control his fists. That they're the same, it's just two different types of abuse, you know? So I look at that and I saw like 8,000 likes and people commenting, facts, 100%. It's like, damn. He said that a woman's mouth, the words she's using, is the same as a man's fists. And that's just wild. And the amount of support for that is just wild. This climate right now is odd, you know? I can't imagine a friend of mine, a male friend of mine, telling me that this girl of his was talking too much, and so he had to swing on her. He had to, it's the same thing. It's just another kind of abuse. No, it isn't. Another post I saw today just was like, fellas, women are emotional. They deal in emotions in the moment. They don't think about the future 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later. So keep that in mind when you deal with women, you know? And that's just another one. This is wrong in another way. One of my observations is a big part of the old, dusty manosphere, a big part of their whole philosophy is rooted in the idea that there's this thing called women or woman, and that it can be mapped. It can be pointed to and described, and that once you can point to it and describe it, now you have you have the tools that you can manipulate it. You can make it submit. You can have it do the things that you want it to do. And I think fundamentally that's wrong. I think fundamentally there's a problem there. And I want to go back to the roots on something, because when I was a kid growing up, myself, impressionable, insecure, trying to get girls, trying to understand girls, I'm not, this is back, what time did this book come out? There's a book by a guy named Robert Greene, and I don't want to put Robert Greene in this category of the manosphere, but because Robert Greene is a well-respected author, and he's written a ton of books, including The 48 Laws of Power, Mastery, but the one I want to point to right now is The Art of Seduction. He did The Art of Seduction, and it looks like it came out in 2003. So I graduated college in 2004. Yikes, time flies. I graduated college in 2004, but I remember reading that book really cover to cover, yo, because he did such a good job. It was an interesting book that attempted to break down the different ways of seducing people, not just sexually, but a lot of it sexually. And there were a lot of historical examples. They had anecdotes and stories from different women and men and couples in history. And it was like a psychological exploration, He broke down people. It was the first time, and I remember reading the book and thinking, wow, it's a little bit, right, I'm old. I remember reading it and thinking, wow, it's a little bit, the directness of it. He talked about victims. He talked about using these psychology things to go in and plan an attack on different women, and he had different labels for different type of women. He would describe in a chapter the coquette, the siren, the Casanova, the charmer. He had all these different words. And the words were simply, after he had the word, you would get these subsets of these descriptions. And so certain women would be like, he'd point out, the ways that certain adult women grow, the challenges they faced as in childhood, could tell you a lot about their personality and tell you a lot about, what they're looking for. And if you can understand what they're looking for, if you can understand what ails them, then you have a pretty good chance of using that so you can ingratiate yourself to them, and you can be attractive to them. You can feel some desire that they're lacking if you can properly place them. You know what I mean? But this book was a long, big book, pretty well cited. It had a lot of psychology and history, but also, again, it talked about stuff like a plan of attack. I want to say just a couple of years after that, we started seeing the growth of the pickup artist. You remember this phase, yo? Y'all remember this phase, the pickup artist phase, man? Where it's just a bunch of people on like early YouTube and on the early internet, these websites, they were like, yo, I'm a pickup artist. Look what I can do. I go out, and some of them would film themselves going out to talk to women, and they would use different techniques, and they would get some success. They would film it. They go, hey, see, I'm the man. I know how to pick up women. But again, the whole time, it's really about like psychological analysis and then acute sort of use of techniques to approach women as prey. Okay? Men as predators, women as prey. And that was the whole thing. Now, I don't know if Robert Greene, I'm pretty sure Robert Greene didn't intend for this. I wonder if he has any content out, if he wrote about this and was like, expressed any dismay, or if he sees himself as connected to that in any way. I wonder. Because I do think that what he wrote was was different from this. But I do think it was a precursor, and I think it led to the pickup stuff. But fundamentally, and the reason I put Robert Greene in there is fundamentally the issue was, I think a lot of the a lot of the male discourse around women and dating has been problematic because it started from this premise that there's a thing called woman that you can map and that you can understand and master and manipulate. The reason there's a problem there fundamentally is that there isn't a thing that is this thing, The world is full of objects that we give labels to. Inanimate objects like my desk, like this weed on the table, like this glass. Sentient objects like pets and dogs and horses. There's trees and grass and flora that is alive. And we give these things labels, and then we think that there are certain behavioral patterns that are inherent to that thing, And I want to say, you can do that with certain things. A chair is going to always operate as a chair unless it breaks or something. The table has these functions, but people are not that way, And our society has just been built to improperly apply labels and then assume that there are behaviors that are attached to that label, and that you can expect certain behaviors from that label. And then if someone deviates from those behaviors, deviates from the expectations of the label, that you can point it out and there's a problem there. That the problem isn't with our model and with our definitions and with our assumptions on those behaviors. The problem is with the observation, is with the thing that we're observing who's behaved differently, So what I'm seeing now in this old manoverse, and the thing that makes Andrew Tate so popular, is he points out to this audience of impressionable, uncertain men, he points out the ways that women don't act the way women should. You see? And there is no way that women should act, But this, like I said with the label stuff, they've developed a vernacular, a way of talking about women that requires and expects behavior like submissiveness. And so, what's wrong with women today? What's wrong with these women today? They're not submissive enough. Why aren't they submissive enough? Women are supposed to be submissive, they say. they think. But where do they get that from? Who told them that? I know as I grew up in a church, I grew up Christian. We heard stuff about that, a woman's place. There's some biblical text that seems to imply that this is a role for women. I'm not Christian anymore. I don't understand. I think that text has some beautiful truth in it, but I think the Bible is an incredible, powerful, important work of historical fiction. I don't think there's anything in there that we can point to and tell somebody that they should behave X, Y, and Z off that. Fundamentally, women are equals. You see? Fundamentally, women are humans. This label, women and this, they're humans, And the more I talk to different women, the more I have relationships with different women, the more I realize that myself. I don't have to read Robert Greene's book. I don't have to go to Andrew Tate, Kevin Samuels, any of these other clowns on the internet. You realize that women are who they are. They're individuals and they have their own hopes and goals and desires and aspirations. I'm a very hardworking person, and I have lofty goals, and I set myself towards them. And I do things every day to try to achieve X, Y, and Z. And one of the things that I'm seeing in this old manosphere thing, there's a sense that women don't operate that way. That women, their goal in life is to be the supporter to the man. They're looking for a good, either rich, capable man that they can support. They can be behind in the behind the scenes. They can provide some pussy. They can, maybe give some emotional support, help mend their wounds, but that they wouldn't have their own independent goals. And I think this comes in part from this separation that maybe Robert Greene was instrumental in. Do you see what I'm saying? There's a separation when you start to break down. You start to create a category and then break it down as though it were a map or some math equation, something that can be objectively observed and we can all kind of look at this one thing. Then you pull the humanity out of it. You can't map humanity and you can't label and then fix what humanity is, And I want to say if you're a man, this. You can't imagine a condition. There's nothing that someone could point to you and tell you that you are and demand of you. And we should be able to look at our wives and our girlfriends, our sisters and our moms, and see the same truth. That they're way more dynamic and interesting than some social requirement to submit or to be domestic, to stay in the kitchen, shit like this. All that stuff was started by old white men. And this patriarchal shit about putting women in the kitchen. Obviously, if you're a man and you go to work, you come home, it's nice to have a meal. That's a nice thing. But these are things to negotiate with your wife. You know what I mean? Some of these norms, all of these norms, they started by people. They're not innate to us. There's nothing natural about men as what, man? Physically dominant. I know a lot of men that don't fit that bill. They're not physically capable like that. But are they men? Yes, they're men. And women who can't navigate the kitchen, who don't want to give birth or to be involved deeply in child rearing, are they not women? Of course they're women. But again, I think I see it all the time, this old manosphere. They have these roles and they call them traditional. They are traditional, but there's something more than that. Traditional kind of glosses over the fact that it's bullshit. And it's harmful. And it puts a separation up. It puts us in a position where we don't see our women. And we see them as adversaries instead of partners. And that leads to a lot of trash. One of the craziest things, we just finished this court case with, what's his name? Daystar, Tory Lanez. The weird support for that, man. This woman, Megan Thee Stallion, has bullet wounds in her feet. And there's this angry support that comes from a weird place. It doesn't come from looking at the facts or looking at the data that we have on the case, looking at the particular moment. It's rooted in a sense of a separation that we have to protect. Men are actually victims of X, Y, and Z. And, you know, Megan, people don't like Megan because she represents this hyper independent. When I say hyper, what do I mean? She's a millionaire. She's a national figure, an artist. She doesn't need anything, including a man. She wants men, it seems. She wants to date. She wants to have sex. She wants to do everything. She wants that stuff. She doesn't need it. And I think the mood and the energy from this dusty manosphere hates that. They hate that. They want to be in a position where women have to be dependent and subjugated, and where men can control things. I want to say again, listen, we're in a society where women weren't able to vote until the 70s. Women weren't able to open a bank account until the mid 70s. Were able to be discriminated against on the count of their gender. A woman who wanted to open a business in the early 70s, the bank teller, the bank person could tell them, you know, bring your husband. Let me talk to your husband. And that was the norm. That's what it was. It's a discrimination no different than racial discrimination. It's a discrimination that's based on someone's immutable characteristics. We separate racial discrimination from this because it's a different thing. It is skin pigment versus gender presentation, but the root is the same. You think, by looking at me as a black man, you think you know me. You think that you have an understanding of my capabilities. And so you've categorized me in such a way where I'm not able to access the things that the white people do. This was the norm for most of American history. And the same is true with women. So we should all be over that, because that shit is stupid. That's not how we operate. But we're not over that. And in fact, a lot of these dudes want a return to that kind of stuff because we've overcome a lot of it. The laws reflect a different sensibility. We look down on that kind of discrimination. But this space, this dusty manosphere, is all about that shit. It's all about that. So let me just point out some of the elements of what I think the old manosphere represents. The old manosphere is very external oriented. Have you noticed that? What they do is, from Kevin Samuels to Andrew Tate, they pose in front of material objects, whether it's a jet or a car. They dress up, they got the nice watch. They smoke cigars. It's a lot of performance. This is what men do. Men look this way. Men talk this way. Like I said, material objects, consumption, they're very consumption oriented. Kevin he talks about high value men. It's a problem. Or high value women. You fix this. Hold up. Let me get this going here. High value men or high value women. To have that as your premise, to have that as your underlying premise for the discussion. He's pointing to a market that exists in the dating scene just like it exists anywhere else, But then he points out what he means when he says a high value man. He's talking about someone with a successful career, someone with money. His insights aren't clever, they're not creative, and they're not true. He's simply playing with kind of what is. There's a problem of judging people this way, and he plays into that. He leans into that rather than to talk and elevate his audience to sort of transcend that bullshit, right? Because our value is not tied to our income. We are valuable people on this earth, with or without the high-paying job, with or without the status. So the problem I had with Kevin Samuels was he was leaning into this anxiety that so many men have, so many men already have, because of problems in our capitalist society. Material object oriented, performance oriented. The old manosphere. Men have to perform X, Y, and Z. Like I said, tiered separation. And it was all about, incompleteness. My man Lantern says, but that's not how society treats us as men. You're right, fam. You're right. You mean that society doesn't treat us equally, and that they do treat us in relation to, how much we make? If that's what you're saying, I agree with you. You're pointing to a problem in society, but it's a problem that we're all grappling with. It's a problem that that we're all grappling with. And I think it's important to point out. I think it's important to point out that these things exist, that men are judged based on their incomes and shit like this, but not to lock that in, because that's not it. You know what I'm saying? If you're a spiritual person, you already know. You already know that each of us is highly valuable, and that these things aren't finances and objects and jobs and labels and titles. These things aren't what we are. You already know that. But so we're fighting against a capitalist mindset. We're fighting against a mindset that is so materialistic. You know what I'm saying? And I think the point is to aspire to talking about, like, when we talk about our relationships, by the way, the other thing is, just to point out that our relationships are part of a broader world. You know what I mean? Like, if you have problems in your relationships, it's not just you and your wife or you and your girlfriend. It is all these things. It is the job market, When the job market is down and people are firing, you're going to have more problems in relationships at home. That's a fact. Finances make courtship and make relationships difficult. That's a fact. But yet when, what's up, Jawad? I'm not sure who that is, yo. Everyone sees themselves as a product here. Yeah, that's how we're painted. That's how they build, our conversations. Our conversations are all built around around performing this thing. If you want to, if you want the job, you got to dress up and put the suit on and all that stuff. If you want to date, you want to get a fine woman, you got to perform this thing. So let me just flip to what I'm talking about when I say the real manosphere, okay? The real manosphere approaches this thing very differently. The men that I follow and that I'm, curating content on Instagram at the Real Manosphere, it's about self-inquiry. It's about self-improvement. Yo, the world is going to be the world. People are going to people. Women are going to do women things. But we are going to be better every day. We're going to look at ourselves and figure out our own challenges and our insecurities. We're going to figure out our strengths. We're going to play to our strengths. We're going to improve the things that we can notice that can be improved. The difference in the dusty manosphere is instead of that self-inquiry, every problem is the woman's fault. Everything is these these greedy, gold-digging bitches, you know? And pointing out all the flaws in women. I want to say again, just like I said with Fox News and CNN, this is intentional. This is how you build an audience. This is how you become famous, right? You don't, especially when you're dealing with an insecure, you know, sort of immature audience. An immature audience doesn't want to know about their own problems. An immature audience they have problems and they love hearing about the other people who caused it. They love a scapegoat. That's why Fox News' audience is as popular as they are, because every day you tune in, you hear about these crazy brown people at the border invading the country. You hear about the black people who are, you know, acting up. You hear about the gays who are doing this and that. All kinds of ways of looking externally instead of asking deep questions about oneself. So to me, the kind of man discourse that I'm interested in is very internal focused. Jawad says, female nature is risk averse. Lantern says, we as men cannot stay the same. I agree with Lantern. Jawad, when you say female nature, I don't know about that, man. I don't know what female's nature is at the end of the day. I don't know if we can make claims about females or women in a broad stroke. You know what I mean? I know some very risky women. And I know some risk-averse men. You see what I'm saying? So I know you'll probably say that, you know, you're saying that most women are or something like this. But, you know, we don't have that data. It's hard to make that kind of claim and make it a true, honest claim. Which leads to the second part, which is the other thing. The new manosphere, I'm seeing guys speaking with precision, speaking with nuance, with an effort to try to talk about things with clarity, you know? Again, Fox News, Biden, immigrants. They speak in broad strokes. They have labels they want to assert. The left is doing XYZ. Socialists, blah, blah, blah. That's just for clicks, you know? And I think the Dusty Manosphere does the same thing. I believe that there's a real matrix going on, some odd transhumanist ideology that's being pushed. I think lots of things are being pushed, bro. I think we grew up in a matrix of a sort, real talk. We always grew up in a system of ideas. If a matrix is just a system of ideas and people existing in that, then we've always done that. I mean, what kind of world was it that Harriet Tubman had to deal with? What kind of matrix was that? A matrix where she was considered less than a human, you know? It was bullshit. And can you imagine? She had to free herself and then, you know, on a dangerous journey and come back and get others, and motherfuckers would get captured and beaten because black people were property. And that's a kind of matrix. If you take it to now, the way we operate our matrix now is very much about us as products and buying things, and you get up and you work your 9 to 5 and you know, have a kid, and it's there are a bunch of norms that we're all expected to behave as. And the problem is that in any society, you know, the human condition is way more complex than that. So these norms will last for a bit, but they're eventually going to get challenged, because people, the expression of humanity is something more than whatever any matrix can create. You know, and for women have a special matrix that they have to navigate. Girls are taught to wear pink, to be quieter. You know, girls are taught if they want to play sports, they're tomboys. It's just a girl. It's just a human with, you know, X chromosomes, let's say. Just a human with a vulva and a vagina, let's say, and she wants to play baseball with the boys, but she's not allowed to. It's a kind of matrix, right? That same girl grows up and continues to be told that she's supposed to wear dresses and all kinds of things. And she's supposed to like men. And if she doesn't like women, and if she doesn't wear dresses and she doesn't wear those, feminine things, she's a dyke. There's all kinds of ways that we punish each other and keep each other in line to fit in accordance with like what we consider normal. And I think that that's kind of what a matrix can be described as. Who controls these norms and what norms are considered natural and who decides? It's a great question, yo. There's a whole history about this. There's a really interesting history, man. There's some books about it. I'll try to check your page after this is done, bro, and send some stuff. But there's a whole history. Look, if you go back to there's a news article I saw of this woman who was in court. She was in court. She was a witness to some other thing. She wasn't even really in the thing. She was just a witness. But she came in pants. And the judge ordered her to go home. The judge says you can't be a witness today because you're inappropriate. Let me see if I can find this real quick. So when you ask the question of like who controls these norms, the people who control the norms, I mean it's in this instance it was a judge. Here it is right here. So this is, it's earlier than that. 1938, Helen Hulick was about to testify against two men who had burgled her building, but then the judge held her in contempt of court for refusing to wear a dress. They made her go home, and then eventually she had to come back and wear a dress so that she could testify at her court case. So that's just one instance, right? What else is there, man? I grew up. I mean, there are men out here who might prefer to wear a loose garment, something we might call a dress. They might prefer that. And I grew up in a situation. I grew up on my block that couldn't happen. Like dudes were gonna make fun of you. You potentially could get beat up. You were definitely gonna get laughed at. You're gonna get mocked. So these things get enforced in all those kinds of ways. Where did it originate? Things get picked up and changed from time to time. I think, there was a time potentially where, I don't know. It's a great question. And there's definitely some books that can break this down. A lot of this stuff we Americans, inherited from, colonial England. And all the, just like our laws and our systems of governance and certain ways of thinking about democracy have their origins from way long ago. The same is true for these laws and customs and these norms. All right? But I just want to say, when it comes to the manosphere again, I think while the other manosphere, the dusty manosphere, is really perpetuating those old norms and telling people how to be and trying to tell men how best to enforce. That's the other thing. They're recruiting men and boys to enforce those things. Have access to good men. That men should punish them in the dating pool. A woman who isn't submissive enough isn't a worthy partner. So that's a way of enforcing these kinds of norms. And a lot of us do it. A lot of us do that. A lot of us have a sense about what we want from our wife or our girlfriend. And we got that sense from our uncles and our fathers. And they got that sense from their uncles and fathers. And it's just how you trickle down culture, But I do think we're in a time now where these kinds of norms are being challenged. We have the opportunity now with the internet, with Instagram and all these, we're so connected that people have the opportunity to talk to each other and kind of break free from some of this stuff. A lot of the colorism in the black community, why it is I see videos of young men making it clear that they don't like darker skinned women, saying that publicly, being proud of that. That That's not innate to them. This preference for light-skinned girls or red bones or whatever. That's taught. That's taught from the uncles and the fathers. It was passed down from a time when people had the power to say that white women were the prize and light skin is the prize. Darker skin is demonic or evil or unattractive at the very least. And we still dealing with that. You see? We still dealing with that. And it's fucked up. And we should be ready to break from that. We should take pride in our ability to, in this moment, create the norms that work for us without the residue of all that old bullshit, problematic bullshit. Let's see here. Are the new colonial projects pushing a Western liberal agenda across the globe? Is it right to challenge these norms? I think it's right to challenge anything that doesn't serve us at all levels. So if we have a set of norms that don't serve us, I don't think it serves us to look at our black women, particularly our darker skinned black women, and to continue that tradition of viewing them as less viable partners. That's crazy. I don't think the norms of styles of dress need to be adhered to. Who cares about that? And I don't think that every woman should be submissive. The ones who want to be submissive, yeah, let them be submissive. If you want to get good at, find a girl and get her excited where she wants to be submissive, do that. My wife is a very independent, bold, straightforward woman. There are times where she is happy to be submissive, and I love it. And I love it when she's bold as well. I love the totality of her. So one of the things I think that the new manosphere is engaged in is, like I said, self-inquiry. This precision of language. We're not talking about women in a loose way because we don't know women. We don't know women. Women is a label. It doesn't signify any menu of characteristics, really, social characteristics or personalities. No personality types that women fall into easily. They run the gamut, The new manosphere talks about the inherent value of men. If you're a man, you are inherently valuable. Another joint I saw this younger dude, a younger kid, he was arguing that women have inherent value and that men don't, that boys don't, that he doesn't, and that's the struggle. That's why, I don't know where he got that language from, but I had to figure out what he was talking about. So I went further and I looked at some of his videos. He's talking about the fact that women, because they're beautiful and desirable, that at any point, even if they're dead broke, they can get money as a stripper just by being themselves, just by dancing around. They can earn a living, or as a sex worker, they can earn a living, and that this is outside the scope of what men can do. And so women have inherent value, he feels, and men do not. He does not have inherent value, he felt. And I think that's a bad, terrible way to think. I don't know where that came from. It's not true. He says his value, and a lot of dudes feel so, his value comes from his job. He has to produce something to get value. And I just don't like that. And it's just not true. It isn't true. The real manosphere is interested in the inherent value of men. And it's asking us to aspire to reach our highest potential. To increase your value through self-awareness, through being aware of who you are and what you're capable of so that you can step into it. It's not about your income or your label or your title, or how many jets you can pose in front of, or how many cars you can pose in front of with a cigar. That's not what being a man is about. That's what posturing as a man is about. That's how you get stuff on the gram, This reminds me too of a lot of the discourse around like kings, like calling ourselves kings, yo. I'm not mad at being called a king. If someone calls me king, says, what up, king? Gives me a dap, I appreciate that. That's fine. But I think that comes from, a king, the goal with that language to call someone a king is it's uplifting, certainly. It can feel nice. And the imagery, it takes you to the imagery of being able to sit on a throne. You know what I'm saying? You're sitting in this massive, castle or some big room. You're on a throne next to your beautiful queen. Kings have money. Kings have power. And so those two things those are valuable things that we say, all right, yeah, king. What up, king? But I'll tell you what, man. Kings also have responsibility. The people got to eat in a kingdom. In a healthy kingdom, the people, the regular, you gotta figure out a way to feed people so that they continue to operate in this kingdom. And the real manosphere is interested in that responsibility part. The dusty, toxic manosphere is not. It's 100% about how special and cool you are, and how unspecial women are, and how it is your duty because to have 4 or 5 women, and stuff about making there's a lot of money stuff, because again, money is a thing. That's actually, to me, one of the only valuable things that you get from some of those guys, right? They're talking about commitment to a career. They talk about entrepreneurship. They talk about financial literacy sometimes. But anytime they start to talk about women, it goes down trash. It goes into the trash. Let's see. Men don't have value. Their value is shown or displayed by their status. The status indicates that the man has used his mind and body to create a reality around him. It is a direct reflection of him. I think men have value. So maybe it's just the word you're using or the word they're using. The way we use the word value is, I think, inappropriate here. What you're describing. Is my joint cutting off here? Looks like the joint cut off for a second. I think we back though. I just want to say that status is a social construct that relates to, jobs, title, and bank account. But humans are something more than that, and it's important to not lose sight of that. Even as we struggle in this society that doesn't provide basic necessities and healthcare, and that we're all grinding and trying to make money and eke out a dignified existence, that this is part of our struggle. And especially as men, we are judged this way. That's true. We are judged this way, and women will judge you, and your prospects will change based on your status and your income, but that you have a deeper value than that. That rises above all that human social construct bullshit, and that's important. A young boy needs to know that, and an older man needs to know that, because what comes from that, if everything is about status and the income, then you're going to be so focused on that you're not going to be able to live. I actually went through a grind phase myself, man. I went through a very serious grind phase in my life for probably about 12 years, where I was not really capable of deep friendships or deep partnerships. I definitely wasn't into women. I saw them as distractions. I had a meal replacement drink called Soylent. Y'all ever seen that or heard about that? Soylent got famous because the creator, he drank just Soylent for 1 year and lived. And so, that was his marketing thing there. But I used to get 12 bottles of Soylent shipped to me every 2 weeks. And I would go certain days just drinking Soylent. I think I went about 3 days one time straight, just Soylent. And by the way, it tastes like ass. It tastes like ass, the toilet paper. But their whole thing was like, this isn't about flavor. This is about getting all your nutrients, everything that you need in this bottle. You don't need to eat anything else. And I did that. And the only reason I did that is because I did that. I was on that heavy for years because I believed that I had to push and get something that it wasn't internal to me. I was grinding, this grind mode thing. I didn't sleep a lot, And I'm gonna tell you what, there's things that can come from that are beneficial. If you focus like that, for real, you will get beneficial stuff. I'm very proud of what I've accomplished at this point in my life, going through that in particular. But I was always valuable. I always had value. Just be clear about that. If you believe that your value, you have to get status first in order to get value, then when you go into a negotiating thing, if you have to negotiate a contract or a salary or whatever, an hourly wage, you don't realize how powerful you are. We're being taught to think of ourselves as less than. You have to first get this first before you can call yourself the great human that you are. And I don't like that. And it's because it's not true. And I think it produces a different type of person. I also know other people, apart from my own struggles with the grind culture and this whole idea of status, I know people in my life who suffer with this, years and years of this kind of like, feeling that they're worthless. And it's just, so I want to use a different word, fam. If you'll allow it, I hope you use a different word too, man. Men have value just like women do, but there is a marketplace that we exist in that isn't. It's not nature. It was created. This whole job market, business thing, these titles, these companies. I've worked for several companies, man. They're created. They're created, and they create things, and people give titles to who and their friends, and if you're and unfortunately, if you're a black man in America, most of us don't have these networks to gain access to these different spaces. And so then you're judging yourself by your title and your income, but you were dealt a historical hand where like some people start off with that. Some people are born to the billionaire, Lots of people are at this point. Born to the millionaire, born into a condition where after they graduate from school, they got a pretty nice job waiting for them. They've got some cool opportunities they can learn. Others of us will have to figure this shit out. And I want you to know that you were valuable before you started, and you're valuable every step along that way. Even if the income doesn't reflect that. But if you keep forward with your shit, things will change. If you keep focused, it will change. But that this isn't your value, okay? So that's the thing about inherent value. And the new manosphere isn't framing value around job titles. It's just not the right orientation for life to be a well-rounded, complete person. I have a video out called Love, Separation, and Kendrick Lamar, and I'd love for y'all to go check that out. I describe about wholeness and oneness. I feel like Kendrick in that last album was trying to point to wholeness and healing. And so many of us need that, because we are saddled with these ideas about who we are. And it puts us out of touch with ourselves, because we are much more than that. And again, the old manosphere leans into that. They lean into the idea that you're incomplete. So even a lot of these career things, these material things, the new manosphere seems to not be material. It's not about that. Yes, you can have nice things. Yes, you should strive to create and to be well compensated, but that you are much more than that. Let's see. Sheba says, we all have inherent value. I agree with her. Jawad says, I believe status and social hierarchy are natural, just like the alpha and beta, different types of being and experiencing life. Warren Farrell's work on this is interesting. I don't know if you've heard of him. You might like it. I'll check out Warren Farrell. What is alpha and beta? So those aren't real. Those are words, right? Like those are labels that somebody creates, and they're creating categories and putting characteristics in them. But that human expression defies labels. This is what I was trying to talk from the jump. So alpha and beta, these are concepts. They're not real. For instance, one of the things with the old manosphere, a lot of these dudes claim to be alphas, but this is a self-proclaimed thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, it feels nice to be an alpha, I guess, but because based on the definition that we've been given about what an alpha is. But again, we're all very complex people, you know. None of us are alphas. None of us are betas. None of us are sigmas. I've been called an alpha by other people. I've been called a sigma by other people as well. Apparently sigmas operate outside this whole system. But this whole system is made up. Warren Farrell. I'm going to check him out, though. The new manosphere is present-oriented as well. We're trying to be better every day today. We're trying to think about our goals and take action on them in the present. I think that's huge too. Warren Farrell's book, The Myth of Male Power, talks about this topic of value. All right, I'm gonna check out Warren Farrell, bro. But straight off the bat, if he's in my view, if he's talking about these status things in rigid terms, in rigid and real terms, then I'm not likely to agree. But I'm down to read or check him out, or if there's a video, I'll check that out as well. We have to be careful, bro, because what if you are born in a state of neglect or poverty in America, and you're in the middle of the Great Depression or some other economic challenge, jobs are tight for you, you may never get this awesome resume or a six-figure salary or whatever standard that is being erected. You have to know that every day when you wake up, you're loved, and that you're worthy and valuable, and that everything that you need is already inside of you, and that you can order your steps and enjoy the present and work towards that future goal, and that you're valuable. And that's key. Even if people don't see that, even if the women you're trying to have sex with don't see that, even if some employer doesn't employ you. So that's my issue with value. But again, maybe Warren talks about it slightly differently. But yeah, just not a fan of that. So yo, this already been what, an hour? I'm gonna wrap this up to I'm gonna just do a quick wrap real quick, okay? The Real Manosphere, the new handle that I have created and captured. It's on Instagram. Follow the Real Manosphere. See the kind of content I'm gonna get curated on there, the kind of men that are going to be talking and posting on there. These are the kinds of men that I met in New York when I spoke at a men's conference this past summer. I spoke at a men's conference, and I was shocked at the number of awesome, accomplished, serious, entrepreneurial, also non-entrepreneurial, like 9-to-5ers, teachers, firefighters, creatives, spiritual men who were able to articulate the condition of manhood, right? The pressures that we have on us. This pressure that you're talking about, this idea of our value being tied up in our income or what we can produce, our productive capacity. That's a harmful thing. And we have to pull ourselves away from that. And it was great to see that so many men agreed with me on that. And to define value differently, and to find it from our inherent internal worth rather than from our ability to afford things. That's not it. It's a different thing. Let's see. Warren Farrell's book talks about what men go through and how value is used for them and against them. He was arguing to change that system, but did not have replacement for it. Interesting. Okay. I think Warren and I think Kevin Samuels used to point to a market. There's a dating market, and there is a sense that of value that is sometimes oftentimes put out there by women, right? Women say they want this, they want sex like this, they want the opportunity to go on trips, and so yes, they're gonna rate, and some women are really playing into this condition of market value. So maybe I just want to put the word market value in the front. The conference was called the 2022 Men's Conference. It was put on by I Am Perspective. I Am Perspective. So yeah, wrapping this up. Listen, men talking to other men, interested in self-inquiry, interested in self-improvement and self-awareness, in that deep work, that deep spiritual work of understanding self, understanding that self is tied closely to everyone around you. That when you get better as a man, everyone around you gets this benefit just quietly. You know, as you improve your awareness of self and how you operate in the world, you become more aware of how powerful you are, and you start to tread with more caution and care because you realize how powerful you are, and every word you utter and every action you take has ripple effects, and you want to be careful to be kind. See, the old manosphere, the dusty manosphere, isn't interested in kindness because it's just not on their radar. What's on their radar is performance, posturing with material objects, being loose with the mouth, saying shit. Pointing out the flaws externally. There's always a problem out there. These wild ass women, if only they would listen, if only they weren't so dumb or irrational or emotional, if only they would submit. I also think that old manosphere is a grift. It's no different from Fox News. It's no different from Sean Hannity, who is just a paid liar. His job, their job, is to get attention and clicks. And the best way to do that is to play into people's fears and anxieties, you know? I worked at CNN for 5 years. I have an understanding about how they market and search out demographics and speak to specific demographics. The dusty manosphere is very interested in speaking to that insecure, impressionable, nervous kid who doesn't know much about himself or about women and wants to know, and he just, kind of feeds that bullshit. So the last thing about the real manosphere is that it's about oneness. It's about wholeness. It's about being whole. It's about recognizing the wholeness in the people around you, including your partners, including the women that you're dating and that you're married to, and the women that you're having sex with. That they're whole and complete people, and they have their own aspirations and their own. They're not just tools for your sexual pleasure, or arm pieces, or dumb weird things over there. Like, they're just like us. And the best thing a very powerful man can do for a woman is to see her, to listen to her, see her, and like deal with her as an equal, instead of assuming that there's something innate about, just like we have these ideas about innate blah blah blah, just like thinking that men are innately less valuable somehow, or there's some innate. Women don't have an innate sense of submission or anything like that. That is a social, that is a thing, that's a norm. It's not. So you love a woman, you care about a woman, you talk to her, you figure out who she is, what makes her tick, what makes her laugh, what her aspirations are. It's funny because if you can accurately and properly do that, she'll be willing to submit, my friend. She'll be willing to do all kinds of things. If you can find the time and the effort and skillfully navigate her, not some image of her, not an archetype of her, not like, some label you have for different types of women, just like men have the beta and alpha, women have there's different classifications of women. Not that. You say, oh, I'm going to listen and be there with her creates a totally different environment in a one-on-one relationship with her. But real talk, manhood is much more than just that one-on-one relationship with your partner. It's about your entire relationship with your entire environment, the world around you. Jawad, you mentioned a second ago about building a world around yourself. I think that's real. I think that that's real. You know, we all have this power to build a world around ourselves that can affirm us and give us strength. And when you feed that world, it feeds you back. I don't think that men should be in conflict with the world. We should look at the world as it is. That's what you're pointing to. And then we need to improve it and navigate it and know that we are, like, it's inherent to us, our ability to make that world whatever we want. We don't need any salary to begin that process. I think that's major key. And so you'll just see, again, follow the Real Manosphere. There's an entirely different focus and energy. There's an entirely different conversation happening. It's not about like how to control women or this or that. It's entirely about self, yo. And being a man, being a responsible, full, whole man, a person who is logical and someone who is emotional, a person who is masculine, but is not afraid of things that might be deemed feminine. He's not afraid of these kinds of things. You're a full person. And that all these things show up. And the more you can allow for yourself to be a full, complex, strange, evolving person, the more you allow that for self, the more you end up having the capacity for empathy and patience, and you allow other people to be who they are. And you create a symbiotic, loving world that way. And that kind of personal effort is entirely different from looking out at the world and thinking you can map who women are and put them in a specific category and then dominate them. Okay? So that's all I'm going to say about that. Jawad, the term that needs to be highlighted is market. I feel you. Yeah. Markets operate. They operate. We operate in a number of different markets. The job market is one of them. The dating market is another one of them. And so there are ways of perceiving and assessing value in each of these different markets. But the Real Manosphere will be able to assess these markets with a clear head and with precision and with a deep sense of personal knowing of value, that your value is independent of whatever like manifests from these different markets. You feel me? So, yo, thank you very much, yo. Lantern, thanks for showing up and talking. Jawad, thank you for your comments. I appreciate it. I'm going to look up Warren Farrell for real. Sheba, love you very much, baby. All right? Take it easy, y'all. That's the end of my stream.
White family worth is 69 times more than that of black families.
Yo, it's just my thoughts, yo. When you got real demons, it makes you run faster. I done mastered that lame shit that y'all lust after. I step into my shadow enemy chapter. It might be too late to be acting friendly after. I plan it all out with menacing laughter. Never wasting my energy with penalties fractured. Focus to see my vision improve. I'm a lens crafter. Now I set the tone for the shit when I used to bend backwards. I'm like a Zen master. We playing chess, okay, I'm playing chess faster. Funny, I just hacked your best password. A clever bastard. Take a breath. Cause your next words might be your last words. This nigga rapping now, but he already got his masters. Show him respect like you show your pastors. But this ain't that. Let me clarify that last verse. I believe that we create divine through the lessons of past hurts. What? And that's the essence of this whole blessing the path works. God is a queer black woman among us, this last earth. It's really not a good look with all of this cash first. You really not pro-life when you fight in a mass birth. You confident, but you don't do the math first. You think you got the gist, but you missed the diasporas. Please shut the fuck up, listen and ask first. You an incel with no intel on how an ass works.